Hey guys, welcome to this week's Money and Investing Show. This week we're exploring 6 different ways of creating new money habits. That's right, getting rid of perhaps some of the bad stuff and replacing it with things that may be the sorts of habits and skills that get you to your financial destination. Plenty to take out of this, and I look forward to seeing you in the show. Hey guys, welcome to this week's Money and Investing Show with me, your host, Andrew Baxter, and as always, my offsider and co-host, Mitch Olorential.
Thank you for having me on the show, Mr. Baxter, and something that I guess you and I probably can relate to on some levels, but not others. That's the topic of bad habits. We've all got them, whether you bite your nails or spend too much money or maybe gamble on the weekend. It all plays an important factor in our financial health leading on. So what I want to get your take on today is 6 ways to rid ourselves of bad money habits this year in 2022.
Gee, that's a good place to start, isn't it? And I think the hardest thing with changing behavior or breaking bad habits, if we put it that way, it's very hard to drop something. And I think it's a lot easier to replace something that's bad with something that's less bad for you. Classic one, people want to stop smoking because it kills you, so they take up eating instead, which will still kill you, albeit in a slightly slower way. And so, it's a slightly less bad habit, but it's a question of really weaning yourself away from that bad stuff and doing more of the good. So let's explore that in some detail. What would you consider to be some of the bad habits out there?
Well, I think our game here is money and investing. So let's get quite specific on this because there's a myriad of bad habits in this world, as we know. What about spending and budgeting, in your opinion? What are some of the, signs that we see that people don't quite have grips on that just yet?
The obvious one, and we've talked about this extensively, is spending more than you earn, which then rolls into creating debt, and particularly bad debt. Buy now, pay later, big credit card debts, all of those sort of dark clouds that can hang over your personal finances. And it's always interesting to explore why people overspend. What are you looking to fulfill yourself with by spending money? And you see typically this in online shopping. Impulse purchases in particular are 2 classic examples of that, where maybe someone is slightly dissatisfied with their life, maybe their life doesn't quite look like the curated picture on Instagram, and to make themselves feel better, that they hit the credit card and hit the online shops or buy now, pay later to do it. And that's a way of wallpapering over some maybe deeper seated issues that you might have, and they're issues that you need to fix if you want to get ahead financially. But I think there are also issues that you need to fix so you can be happy. And ultimately, life isn't about making money, life's about being happy.
Totally. And the problem with my generation specifically, to talk to that, is social media, because everyone's having this awesome life, driving a G-Wagon or wearing a Rolex or whatever it may be. And you think, well, why don't I have that? Which the temptation to have a credit card and go to Louis Vuitton. And
I have to share a story with you at the weekend. I was in my local coffee shop, and some Instagram person was getting a number of photos taken with one of my cars at the weekend, and actually saw it come through on Instagram, how cool they look. And it's like, it's my car. It's not yours, it's mine. I didn't get a photo with it. It's my car. I don't care. But they were there, and that sort of highlights the bogus nature of the image that's actually created. I'm sure I'll see them again, and I'll let them have it for not giving me credit or copyright for that, having earned the money to pay for the vehicle. But nonetheless, it's a really good example where people are aspiring to things, but there's a difference between aspiring to things and sacrificing your future by squandering the opportunity, the chips you've got in your hand now, and wasting them on things that ultimately aren't going to give you long-term gratification anyway.
And I think it's really been exacerbated by these finfluencers. So people on TikTok, for example, living this lavish lifestyle, saying buy this particular cryptocurrency or buy this stock, only to think that it's going to rise and then probably get dumped by them once they've made their profits. What are your thoughts on the whole finfluencer movement?
Yeah, look, ASIC, our regulator, has started to sort of circle the wagons on that for financial services businesses to say, look, be very, very careful if you're using finfluencers to shape your message and to the community. And look, and I say this, and I'm very minded of the fact that people that are watching this are watching it on social media. So to an extent, with influencers too. I guess the difference is we're also licensed, qualified professionals that have spent their entire career in this space, helping people get an outcome, as opposed to someone that's just popped up from nowhere, that's got no real experience and is selling a dream. So there really is a big difference in there, and it's quite hard for people to sift the wheat from the chaff in that space, I suppose. And again, it goes back to that sort of urge that people have where they're chasing the wind. They want more from life. They don't really know what it is, but they want something, and any road will take you nowhere. And you're quite right. You see the volume of stuff that's pumped out on crypto. I haven't seen anything for the last few weeks, given the billions that have been wiped off that. But nonetheless, when it's going well, you see all these people pop up, and how someone that was earning 12 cents a year working at a service station is now a billionaire on the back of their crypto investments. Click here to find out how. And they are selling an unlicensed, unregulated dream that people do buy into, and it's quite sad because the person that buys into that may have taken a small amount of money that they've worked hard to save, and all of a sudden it's gone because it's got sucked down the drain of somebody else's business model.
Totally. And putting a ribbon around habits, I'm sure this resonates with, at least one of these is going to resonate with our viewers out there. You spend too much, you don't budget, you gamble too much, you use Afterpay, or you focus too much on social media. Let's now transition, AB, into the meaty part of today's episode. What do you suggest? What are our 6 methods to get rid of those habits this year?
Yeah. Look, they don't necessarily sound like fun, and it's like anything, getting up at 5 a.m. and going for a run doesn't sound like fun either, unless that's your thing. But nonetheless, the outcome is worth the short-term pain or sacrifice. And number one, right off the bat, seeing as we're in the nuts and bolts of money, it's got to be budget. You have to have a budget in mind, and budgets, people quite oftentimes will steer away from. It doesn't sound fun. It sounds punitive. The fun police are stopping you do anything you want. Look, you can do anything. If you want to go and have $500 on the horses at the weekend and it's in your budget to do that, it's not a problem at all. It just needs to be accounted for. And that's the big difference. Budgets aren't walls to imprison you. They're guidelines to ensure that you stay on track for what you want. And they can be very, very useful for sort of, an antidote, if you will, for impulsive purchasing and things like that. If I look in the financial planning space and financial planning business, for example, that's the first place to start with a lot of people, because in order to qualify for a loan these days, the requirements are fairly stringent. You've just gone through this process yourself. What do you earn, and what do you spend, and what do you spend it on? And that whole notion of responsible lending comes down to how people then go about spending their money. Now, you might argue it's your money to spend, which is true, but if someone in good faith is lending to you, they want to make sure that you've got some reasonably solid habits in there, good habits that is, and discipline in order to ensure that they get their loan paid back. So budgeting is crucial, and it's actually really confronting if you sit down and do it, because it really shines a light on some of the things that you do that you go, holy smokes, I didn't realize that. So I'll give you one really stark statistic. The average American, $325 a year on subscriptions.
It's a fair chunk.
Just a subscription. You start to think, well, gee, that's a big number, but is it? Okay, let's go through some simple things. Netflix, Stan,
YouTube, Apple
Music, Peloton subscription,
Spotify.
And before you know it, you're starting, we're not talking about satellite TV or anything like that at this juncture right now. Maybe you've got an online news service you subscribe to, a magazine or something like that. And you can see very quickly how that number starts to ratchet up. And our listeners will be hearing, I'm thinking, oh yeah, I've subscribed to that too, and I've got that as well. And it's actually not a bad place to start, is to actually have a look at all those charges against your credit card and go, yeah, I don't actually use that. Get rid of it. And that's money that's not only not going out the door now, but is also sitting in the plus column from a budget perspective. So, it's very, very good to do those sorts of things, probably at least once a year. And we do it as a business. There are services that you subscribe to that were important at a point in time, but you no longer use them, and so cut them. Simple as that.
I guess that's a good point too. That budget has to be constantly adapting as your lifestyle shifts.
Yep.
You might be earning more money over time, but if you can keep that spending to a certain level, I remember my dad always said, mate, no matter how much you earn, try and keep your spending the same,
yep.
and then the surplus you can keep and invest and save. Great advice.
Absolutely, and similar advice to my dad gave me. It is really interesting. He always said, like, it doesn't matter how much you earn, you'll always find a way of spending it, which is so true. Oh, if only I earned $1 million a year, I'd spend it. I'd be fine. You wouldn't. You'll spend it. You'll just have different cars. You'll drink different things, you'll eat at different places, you wear different clothes, live in a different house, have a different watch, whatever it may be. All of those different things you'll chew through. So you've got to have a level of discipline there and keeping you on the prize. And ultimately the purpose of a budget is to let you get what you want. And all the other things are just the distractions, if you will, that come along the way, the sort of pop-up ads in life, if you will, that you need to click on and close so that you can keep on the journey to what you want.
Couldn't agree more. And to add to that, let's talk about point number 2. I know you and I were speaking of this earlier today, so I hope you don't mind me throwing this one in on your behalf, AB, is not chasing the wind. It's important to have color in your life and buy things that you want, but without going overboard and constantly looking for that next thing.
By chasing the wind, I guess it's trying to chase after the unattainable. And social media has a huge role to play in this in terms of the lie, for want of a better description, that it portrays. And as I say, that incident at the weekend was just, I wish I'd videoed it and then I'd upload it onto the dude's feed. And it's just like, what are you hoping to achieve with this? And in the same way, when you talk about investing, there's a young fellow I do a little bit of stuff with. He's a barista at that particular coffee shop, funny enough, and he's doing some crypto, and I've given him a bit of training on trading in terms of risk management and technical analysis to help him, which certainly has. And his goal is quite ambitious. It's a goal that he's capable of achieving. He's a smart kid. But it's like, why do you want that? It's, well, I just don't want to work. And that's fair enough. If that's your goal in life, there's no problem with that. And I'll say he's a great kid, and he does work. He works as a barista, and so he's working. He's not sort of living off the taxpayer, so to speak. You've got to have some level of purpose, and you've got to have some clarity on what that is. Otherwise, you'll chase after anything that prevents you from doing it. And we see it in our space. I mean, obviously, we teach people. Actually, we don't teach people how to trade. What we do is teach people how to make money from trading. And they sound similar, but they're actually worlds apart. One is about making money. One is about learning something. And I like to talk to our new clients when I get the opportunity and say, what prompted you to want to do this? Why are you embarking on this journey? Because let's face it, trading is hard. It's not something that you get into on a whim. It's something that you want to do if you want to be successful at it. And you can often see, depending on their answer, typically how successful they're going to be. It's like, I hate my job, I just want to do something different. It's a really bad reason to get into trading. You've got to have a positive reason for wanting to do it. I want to get my money working harder. I want to learn how to reduce my risk. I'm fed up with my fund manager underperforming the market. I want to broaden my knowledge so I can become self-sufficient. Whatever it may be, they're all positive reasons. Not liking your job and just looking for an out is probably not a good reason. May give you motivation, but it's not a great reason to learn to trade.
Totally. Well, there's 2 off the bat. So budget, don't chase the wind. We've got 4 more to cover. AB, what's your third point?
Look, I think you got to have a game plan. Nothing in life happens by accident. You must have a game plan. And we've talked extensively at the start of each and every year about goal setting and how important it is and the types of goals to set and the fact that you need to have a level of emotional buy into that where it becomes a must. It's not a should, it's a must. And the way to track that to stay on course, you have to have a game plan, because without it, you're just going to bounce from pillar to post. From an investing perspective, that game plan may be, your goal might be to buy a property, which is yours for the next couple of months, and I suspect that's something you might conclude sooner rather than later. But there's been a game plan in play to achieve that. It's not you've got out of bed one day and gone, I think I'll buy a property. There's been a process of saving, there's market research, finding a buyer's advocate, getting your finance sorted out. So you've had a definitive game plan in play so that when the right opportunity presents itself, opportunity is not random. It's about preparedness coming together with the door being open. If the door's open and you're not prepared, you can't walk through it. If you've done the preparation work and the door's open, then you'll get through it. So you need to have a game plan.
The harder you work, the luckier you get, right?
Seems to be.
Okay, so there's 3. So budget, don't chase the wind, have a game plan. What do we got for number 4?
Eliminating bad debt is essential, because as long as you have bad debt, it is a millstone around your house. So let's explore what bad debt is. Good debt is where you've bought an asset, and so, for example, a property, or you've invested in your future learning, or you've got
all that kind of stuff.
Margin lending, any of those types of products. And effectively, what you've done is bought an asset. And there's a debt associated with that. That's good debt because you've bought an asset. Bad debt is credit card debt, where you've got a legacy of previous purchases, impulsive or otherwise, that you've had. Maybe you've come out of a relationship, and I've had a couple of clients that have been in this space where the partner has gone ballistic on the card and left them with hundreds of thousands of dollars of bad debt. They've separated, and it was their card, and they're on the hook for it. That's an example of bad debt. That buying a car bad debt, do it on finance unless you can run it through your business. And always, one of my good friends and a really important early mentor to me, someone I spoke alongside a lot, and also a fellow rugby enthusiast, Robert Kiyosaki. Robert talks about it extensively in terms of the importance of good and bad debt, and you have to eliminate bad debt. If you're servicing credit card debt, let's say you're paying the minimum each and every month, it's $800 a month, and you're chipping away at it. Just get the thing paid off, because as long as that's there, you're never going to be able to grow. You're also probably not going to be able to borrow in today's world either, because most lenders, most banks, for example, will look at that bad debt and go, yeah, you've got legacy issues here where you struggle to manage your spending. We don't want to borrow that. We don't want to have your problems bleeding across into our lending book. Buy now, pay later is a very, very good example of that. And I think we've talked about that previously in part in several podcasts. Buy now, pay later, the last 3 years has been the story, but I think it's done. I think the pin's gone in the balloon. It's popped, not only in terms of the share price performance, which has been basically decimated. Afterpay is about half of what Block, formerly Square, but Block, Jack Dorsey's takeover bid was at. And I think it's the technology may be great, but that predatory lending, which effectively is what it is, has seen significant financial hardship for a lot of younger people that, it's free money and nothing's free in life. And when you start to then realize that over those 4 easy payments, those 4 easy payments are getting more and more. I think you saw people buying drinks at the
drink now, pay later, cocktails you can put, or any drink for that matter, you can put on Afterpay.
There we go. We might get you to get a round of coffees when we're done today and see how we go.
I never buy the rounds,
That's true. We'll stitch Gibbsy up. But the reality is that impulsive, immediate gratification of that 4 easy payments, there's a price to pay down the line. So you've just got to eliminate that bad debt. If you've got tax debt that's lurking around in the background, one of the things the ATO, and it's very rare that you get to talk about the tax office in glowing terms, but one thing that they've been quite good at, I think, for a lot of people through the pandemic, is being much more open to having a conversation of, look, I'm struggling. Can I get a payment plan in play? I need to spread it up, but get it paid off, whatever you need to do, because if that bad debt's chasing you around, it's a major distraction psychologically, and it's a heavy burden to carry around. Get it paid off, face up, man up, strap a set on, realize that you spent the money, you owe it, get it paid, and clean yourself up. And on that note, I won't share with the details of who the client was. As a younger fella from overseas, who is a client of ours down in Melbourne, and he actually had drug debt from another country. That's the reason he left the other country and came here, and actually went back and faced the music. And my respect for him, not having drug debt, that's a terrible thing, and that doesn't paint someone in a particularly good light. But the fact that he was of a strong enough character, and he'd been through quite a big journey of personal development, actually working with another partner company that we work with. They do some great work in personal growth. And he went back and faced the music. And that's a bit harder than going into the bank saying, look, I know I owe you 50 grand. Can I pay? This is like to some fairly hard-nosed characters saying, look, I stuffed up. I need a runner. What have I got to do to square this off? And whatever that thing is that's chasing you around. And I caught up with him on his return. He did make it back on his return. And he said it's the best thing he ever did. Yes, it's cost him a lot of money, but he said, I've got my life now, and I've got my life back without that distraction. That's an extreme example. That's probably a bit harsher than buy now, pay later, although that's technically, I think, what he did. But a very extreme example, but it was really liberating to see how he's gone on, and he's now moved into some good things, and he's kicking some really big goals. Huge
awesome
thing.
It's not just about your money, it's about your conscience as well. So get rid of consumer debt. Nice one. Point number 5, AB, what do we got?
Keeping an eye on things and checking in. Oftentimes, we've just gone through the New Year cycle, and people talk about, New Year's resolutions and how do we go this year, or end of financial year doing a review. I think, one of the things that we espouse within the money and investing planning system that we have, moneyandinvesting.com.au, you'll see our planners in there, is very, very important. And that's something called a money date. And we talk about every month having a date with your money. It doesn't sound particularly personable. There you go. There's a couple of sacks of swag on the table and you're having a glass of wine talking to your money. Don't mean like that, but actually sitting down and reviewing how you've gone each month toward those financial goals. Because monthly is probably the right frequency with which to look at it. There's enough movement in markets. You can do that daily at the moment, I suppose. But monthly there's enough movement, and there are things to look at to see how you're progressing. And if you're in a relationship, have your partner involved with that too, to say, hey, look, this this is what we've done, or this is where we've got to this month, and make it fun, because the more fun something is, the better. Go out for dinner, put it on your buy now, pay later, and spread it over 4
and break
payments.
all of the rules on your money day.
rules.
Well, if I was a single guy, I'd be hoping for more than one date a month, but we can start with that.
I'm sure you do better than that. But the reality is, keep an eye on things, do regular reviews, because rather like being lost, if you've taken a wrong turn and you just do a U-turn, you're back in the right spot. But if you took a wrong turn an hour ago and you've been continue on in the car, you're probably lost. Same with your money. Each and every month, check you're on track, and if you're not, take that corrective action early on. And that corrective action only needs to be minor at that stage. Whereas if you leave it a year, 5 years, 10 years, or just live in denial for 20, 30 years, it's a Herculean task to turn around. It's not going to happen.
Great one. And last one, number 6, what have you got?
Don't create obstacles.
Okay.
I couldn't do that. I've always been bad with money. I don't know where to start. I don't have time.
Stories.
Why should I bother? Yeah, and people do live in stories. And harsh as this may well come across, stories are softeners effectively, and they're your justifier for why you don't have something in life. They're excuses. And you can make money or you can make excuses, but you can't have both. And I think, it's very, very easy to create obstacles. Look, I'd love to do that, but... okay, so when anyone uses but in a sentence, what it basically means is ignore everything I've just said previous to the use of the word but. Oh, I'd love to have all that. No, you wouldn't. I can't have it. I'd love to have that, but I can't have it because I don't know anything about financial markets. Okay, so the actual story is you know nothing about financial markets. If you wanted the stuff before the but, you could learn that. And in this day and age, we're in the information giga highway in terms of the volume of information that's out there. Just pick and choose your influencer that you're going to follow. There's so much information that's freely available. There's so much information that's freemium. There's so much information out there that's premium, and you can pick up books. There's YouTube. There are courses like we provide, and everything in between to give you the necessary skills to do virtually anything in life. And it could be from the most obscure to the most focused, depending on what it is you're looking to achieve. But if you live in that, I just used the word but, didn't I? If you're living in that story, I couldn't have that, I could never do that. I've always been bad with money. I've never really been able to save. I've always spent more than I've earned. I like new stuff. That's just a story you're telling yourself as to why you can't have that. You can change that in a heartbeat if you've got a strong enough focus on wanting more. And look, if you want impulsive purchases and a financially stressed life, and one where you don't have a future financially set up for retirement, that's an easy choice too. Just keep doing maybe what you're doing if you're on that pathway. If you're ready for a change and you want a different outcome, if you want something different, you have to do different things, and you've got to do them in different ways. I've never been able to save. Well, start.
Good advice.
There you go. It's as easy as that. Do you know how you do that? Go and get an empty jam jar and put your change in there. If you're old school and you use money, or if you're on a credit card, use the things like Acorn or some of the technology these days, the micro saving facilities that are there. If you're more structured than that and you've got an online bank account and you can work out how to log online, which is just about everyone on the planet now, have an auto debit every week when your pay goes in to take 30 or 50 or $100 or whatever the number is, and put it in an offset account that's a savings account. It's not hard. Anything hard is breaking the habit of telling yourself why you can't do that. And that just requires a level, I believe, of honesty with yourself. The truth always will set you free. And if you have that honest and frank conversation with yourself, do you want to change? And if you don't, that's okay. Don't. This isn't about changing who you are. It's trying to help you be the best version of you. That's all. And if you're happy with where you're at and what you've got, that's great. Don't change a thing. But if you want things to change, if you need things to change, if you've had a guts full of more month for money, and you've gone from eating out, Uber Eats or whatever it may be, there's another one, get rid of as a habit. Uber Eats 3 or 4 times a week, to the end of the month, it's 5-minute noodles or whatever it may be. If you're fed up with living like that, then it's time to do something about it. So loop back, look at our goal setting video, podcast 1, series 1, podcast 1, series 2, podcast 1, series 3. Go back through those and look at the game plan to be laid out if you want to change. And it's easier than you would think. It just requires a commitment. And commitment is a very, very easy word to throw around, but it's a very, very hard word to live with.
As one of my good friends once said, just do it. Best advice possible.
Good marketing slogan. I reckon we could set up a sneaker company and create a marketing slogan.
Should we have it as orange and name Nike?
Sounds like a plan.
Well, there's 6, AB, getting off track there. And can I put you on the spot here for a seventh, a bonus tip to rid ourselves of money habits or bad money habits this year?
I think gamify this would be making things fun is a good thing. And I guess this is probably one of the biggest learning points that I've had as a parent. You know, I've got 5 kids, my eldest is 7, and with a house full of small young kids, watching them grow up is an incredible thing. And getting their involvement in stuff is probably the biggest challenge, because as an adult, most of the time, as a professional, as an industry leader, we see things through quite serious lenses, and it's just, you can learn this as a process, and it's very dry and very binary. And I think my biggest learning point as a parent has been the journey into making the mundane exciting. And we've done this on so many different things. Like, we've got a couple of dogs. One of them's a Great Dane. So when she has a poo in the garden, it's quite a substantial episode.
How many people does it take to pick up that?
Well, luckily, usually that sits on my shoulders at the moment. That's not something I've managed to outsource to my kids yet. But the reality is, we've got a game. We call it Poo Patrol. Instead of Paw Patrol, it's Poo Patrol. They go out there, there, daddy, and it's the most unpleasant, mundane task. So you make it fun. Budgeting or getting yourself back on track financially. And maybe, your finances might look a big pile of dog poo at the moment too, but it's just a choice whether you leave it there festering or whether you get it cleaned up and have a nice looking yard. Same thing with your money. So, setting the intention and taking that process of, if it's budgeting, and making it fun so that there's a reward at the end of the day, or you can gamify it in some way to keep your enthusiasm there, is key. And we focus massively on that with our, as I say, the money and investing planning system is not a bunch of dry goals, not a bunch of really sterile steps, but bringing this into a real life context so that you can do this every day and enjoy doing it as just as much as you get to enjoy the reward at the end. Because, as your good friend, the philosopher Alan Watts says, life is not a destination, it is a journey all the way through, and each and every bit of it needs to be enjoyed. Rather, like listening to music, is not the end of the music, it's the whole piece that's exciting and needs to be fun. And in the same way, this journey to winning the game of money, or winning the game of life, winning the game of happiness, whatever it may be in the circumstance or the parameters that you want to define it, if you can make it enjoyable, so every day it becomes a fun game, you versus you, or you versus the game plan that you've got, and you enjoy it. By the time you start to kick goals and it's on autopilot, you just be having an absolute blast. And that may sound a little canned, and you go, oh, that's some sort of theory you might have read somewhere in a personal development book or a fortune cookie or something like that. It's a game I've played for years. And I've been very, very fortunate in my life. I haven't had to think about or worry about money for a very, very long time, only because I did the work early on. And you can become very blasé and complacent with that. And I went through phases, as I've talked about previously, where I spent a lot of money. I didn't spend more than I should because I could afford it. But nonetheless, I spent a lot of money on different things, immediate gratification, having fun. And I reframed all of that again with a very good buddy of mine. And I've told you this story before about the no spend game. Anything over $200, got to check in with each other. He's running a multi-million-dollar business. I am. You spend on what you want. But you check out, mate, I'm going to think about buying this. A couple of just leave it and have a think about it. And that tip about spending is so strong. If you're thinking of buying something, just have a think about it for 5 minutes. And you almost, in that 5-minute period of time, will go, actually, I don't really need it. Don't worry about it. And then all of a sudden it's gone from going out the door to being in the savings column. It was going to go anyway. You allocated it to spending, so whack it across to your savings account. It's done. And that game that you play with yourself like that becomes, especially if you're a competitive person, I'm not competitive, but if I were,
sure,
you kind of, you then are competing with yourself, and that's where you really start to get some crazy momentum. And I know that sounds really odd and quite strange, but it's such a powerful way of playing that game.
AB, I think that example there ties in a lot of those pieces of advice that you've given. We've talked for a number of minutes over our allotted time here today. I think that's an awesome way to finish. So thanks very much for your insight today.
Absolute pleasure, Mitch, anytime. There you have it, guys. Make sure you give us a review and a rating so we can get this message out to more people, and we'll look forward to hosting you next week.